Hello and good evening, and thank you so much for coming along this evening to celebrate the world of innovation with us at the Innovation Beehive. You're not here to hear me speak, and I'm not going to speak for very long, but I just wanted to say how amazing it is to be in this room today. 10 years ago, when the Innovation Beehive was founded, if we had held an event on innovation at this venue, it would have been filled with marketing, R&D, IT. And I look around this room today and I see that it shows the seismic shift that has taken place in the world of innovation over the last 10 years. Today we've got L&D, HR, supply chain, procurement, CEOs. And what that tells me is that the whole world has woken up, and this room has woken up to the reality that now innovation is everybody's problem. We're living in a world in which we're moving at such pace, and we need to be so agile that in order to even stay standing still, we need innovation to be everybody's problem and not just the world of R&D and marketing. So we at the Innovation Beehive identified that, and Mark wrote a book called The Innovation Ecosystem about that. And when we work with clients through our capability building, through Zach, our capability director, and through our consulting, Laura, our consulting director, we see time and time again the need to build an innovation ecosystem in organizations. So you've all got the book. Yay. So have I. So have I. Yay. You've all got the book. But now let's hear from the brain behind the book. Mark O'Keefe, he draws on decades of experience, both in HR and innovation. So he was HR director for Harrods, the food hall at Harrods, HR director for Boots in London, HR director for KFC in Europe, and he ran innovation projects for over 10 years. The combination of that experience has given him a really unique perspective on innovation, and that experience has enabled him to develop this model for innovation, for organizational innovation, which people can not only understand because of its simplicity, but they can also apply and make a difference to their organizations. So Mark is a leadership fellow at St. George's House, Windsor Castle. Mark has spoken at international events, including the Masters and Robots Conference in Warsaw. Mark's been published in HR Magazine, People Management, Forbes Magazine. And of course, most recently, Mark has written The Innovation Ecosystem. So as author of the book that we're all here tonight to celebrate, I give you Mark O'Keefe.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, and that one word, though, decades of thanks so much for that, Joe. Thank you very much. It is lovely, actually, to see so many people in this room tonight, so many of whom are clients. I'd like to thank our clients who we work with, who pay our wages, who pay our mortgages. Our number one value is we love our clients, and it's so nice that so many of them have turned out tonight to support the launch of this book officially. Thank you so much for everything you do for us at the Innovation Beehive. We wouldn't be here, none of us would be here actually, without the support of Google, who've really been with us since the very beginning, whether it's Anna Louise, whether it's Sarah, whether it's Jen, who's now left this business in the UK to be Google in America. They've been with us as partners right from the very beginning and very graciously hosting us here this evening. And those of you, when you get a chance to read the book, will read interviews with some people who are here this evening as well. So we've got William Redaway from J. Murphy and Sons over there, hello. And we've got Harvey Wade, who was at Cisco Systems when we interviewed him, and others who aren't. So thank you very much for your contribution to the book, and I'm sure people will enjoy your point of view. So everyone says, well, there is a saying that everyone has a book in them, and I guess it must be true, because, good Lord, I wrote one. Actually, I started writing it in January 2018. I remember I came back to work, and I said, right, this is the year I'm going to write the book. And almost a year later, I'm standing here with it published, and now discussing book number 2, which I believe will be coming out in January 2020, or so I'm told. Innovation ultimately is all about solving a problem. It's about taking a need, a pain, a desire, whether it's expressed or unexpressed, and creating a solution, whether it's a product, a service, or an experience that meets that need, problem, or desire, and hopefully creates value for the organisation that delivers it. And actually, that's kind of why I wrote this book. Because so often we've been hearing from our clients over the last few years, how do I create sustainable innovation in my business? And this isn't just about things like, okay, I've got a team build coming up and I want, an agile innovation day with Zach, or I've got a particular issue with a project here or a department here. Can you come in and do some consulting work and try and fix it? Or I think there's something wrong with our kind of employee value proposition. Can I help you use some innovative tools and techniques to recruit more innovative or better talent? People are saying that's important, and that gives you short-term spikes. But people are saying to us time and time again, how do I create sustainable innovation? How do I make it part of my business as it is in businesses like this? And so those of you who've been in our training programs will understand the concept of parallel worlds. And I tried to solve that problem for our clients by writing this book and using the concept of parallel worlds. So I've gone out and worked with and worked alongside, visited and interviewed some of the world's most innovative and sustainably innovative organisations. So whether it's spending time with Terry Kelly at W.L. Gore, whether it's hanging out with our friends here at Google, whether it's going and meeting Nick Room at Airbnb, or whether it's spending time with the Ritz-Carlton, finding out time and time again what those organisations do to sustainably innovate in their parallel world, understand the principles of what they do, and then apply it back to that challenge that our clients give us. How do I create sustainable innovation? And time again on my travels and in our projects, I saw there were 4 key elements that showed up continuously. And those 4 key elements are what I call the innovation ecosystem. And they are very, very simple. 1, those organisations that are continually and sustainably innovative have a very, very clear sense of their innovation direction that is understood by everybody in the organisation. 2, their leaders in the business create the culture and the environment where innovation is encouraged. 3, they create an engine with the right structures and processes in their business that enable innovation. And 4th, they put the strong enablers in place by investing in their people, by giving them the skills, the tool, and the space to innovate. Once those 4 elements are in place, once that innovation ecosystem exists in your organisation, it works symbiotically. And if you go round the innovation ecosystem, out at the end, you get your innovation. So I'll go through my favourite examples, which you'll read more in the book, of each of those 4 elements, and then perhaps we've got some time for Q&A at the end. So first, the innovation direction. So, we've all lived through the 90s. We've all now have kind of organisational missions and values, and, we have a purpose, North Star, whatever you call it. We call it the duvet chuck. Why I want to get out of bed on a Monday morning. All organisations now say, we have a purpose, we must stand for something. Okay. And then you have a strategy that sits underneath that hopefully helps you to deliver that purpose. Then underneath that strategy, you have functional objectives. And then in best practice organisations, and I'm sure the HR directors in the room are nodding, individuals have their own objectives and they all roll up ultimately to deliver the strategy to help move you nearer to the vision, the purpose, the North Star, whatever you call it. Fine. But more and more in disruptive times, in really vulnerable and uncertain times, what we're finding is organisation strategy will take you here. But actually, what your shareholders demand and what your growth demands, you need to go further than that, and that gap can only be filled by innovation. So those organisations that are continuously and sustainably innovative are the ones that have a very clear and simple, articulated innovation direction. People understand how it links to the strategy and how it will deliver the plus on the strategy. And people also understand how it links to their job and what they need to do to be able to deliver upon it. Now, you'll read more about it in the book and lots of examples of where it exists, but just a couple that I find really fun and are my personal favourites. I love Mark Randall, who's the SVP of Innovation at Adobe. I love his table of strategic elements, where he literally has lined out the 13 priorities that they have at Adobe and says, here they are in a table of strategic elements, because the people he's talking to are kind of people with a science background. It works from an internal commerce perspective to put it out as a table of strategic elements and says, this is what we're innovating on. If you're not innovating on these, you're innovating in the wrong place. But what he also does that I just love is he says, like in chemistry, take those elements and mesh them together. So what happens if you put gamification and local together, mesh those two? In that intersection, what special, new and different and competitive ideas can we have? You might think 13 is quite a lot. Cisco have got their 5 pillars. Very clear what their 5 pillars of innovation direction is. And if you're not working on one of those 5 pillars for innovation, you're working on the wrong thing. So be really clear. We call it freedom in a gilded cage. Set the parameters, set the direction, and let your people travel in the direction you want to travel in. The second element, and this is where leaders play a significant and important part, is the environment that they create in their businesses. Those organisations that are continuously and sustainably innovative are the ones where leaders talk continuously about the innovation imperative. It's not just in a once-a-year shareholders letter, or maybe an all-hands meeting, or when you sit and have your performance review. What have you done that's innovative this year? Oh, I did this, right, tick. It's talked, we've all been there, but it's talked about all the time. They continuously talk about the need for innovation. So, when you go and spend time with Terry Kelly at WL Gore, she's absolutely has exactly the same message continuously. What she talks about, the innovation imperative and people. People, because she believes if you get the best people in the organisation, she as a CEO doesn't have to get dragged down into all the detail. She's a very smart woman. Secondly, talking about the innovation imperative means they will continue to innovate to make sure WL Gore remains #1 in guitar strings as well as waterproof clothing. She talks about the innovation imperative being, don't take us below the waterline. Don't sink the boat, but anything above that, knock yourself out. Be as adventurous and as innovative as you like. Secondly, those leaders who are sustainably innovative in their organisations are the ones who encourage experimentation and failure. Now, failure is not It's a very loaded word. You've all heard fail fast and learn. Blah, blah. Fail, you in this room are not people who necessarily failed at life, let's be honest. You've probably all done quite well at school. You've all got quite good jobs. You've all been relatively successful because you've not failed in your life. Yet suddenly in the world of innovation, we have to talk about failure. It's a very, very loaded world, and it's very difficult for people to actually grasp that concept. I like the concepts in Lean Startup, where they talk about validated learning, about getting stuff out really quickly, learning from your end user, validating that learning, changing and iterating. That's what failure means. But Jeff Bezos, who, let's face it, is one of the richest men in the world and runs one of the most successful organisations in the world, talks about failure and success at Amazon being inseparable twins. And in your book, you'll hear about a story he tells about watching a toddler who was playing with one of those cognitive development toys. And there was a square and a circle and a star, and she was trying to put the right shape in the right hole. And at first the shape wouldn't go in, so she turned it round, wouldn't go in, turned it round, put it in. Great, fine. Ooh, that's how you do it. Second time didn't work. She got faster and faster. And he said, that's what I want Amazon to look like. Because what was happening there is that child was learning by failing, learning by doing, getting better each time, and also was failing publicly. She was not in any way concerned that I was watching her fail. And somehow, when we get into managing our careers and managing the way we present ourselves in the world, we forget that innocence and naivety that that toddler had. Right? It doesn't matter. I'm learning. So failure, a massively important part of the innovation process. Also, those leaders who encourage innovation are the ones that break down silos and make information flow freely across organisations. The third element of the innovation ecosystem is what we call the engine, and it's where most leaders go first. To some extent, it's almost the easiest thing to do. It's like the tick box exercise. So we've got an office that looks vaguely like Google, yeah? So that's cool, we're innovative. Or we trained everyone on, Zach's taken everyone through design thinking and agile methodology. Shh, we're innovative, isn't it? Or, we've done away with this. Actually, all you're doing is kind of tick boxing the latest HBR. Those things are important, the structures and processes that you put in place. but them in and of themselves will not make you an innovative organisation. They put people in the right direction, they reward people, but they don't make them innovative. But because you're able to put them in objectives, you're able to put them up on a PowerPoint, and you're able to put them in a shareholders report, people then suddenly think that you are being innovative, or that will get them to be innovative. I've seen it at my worst, where somebody has reorganised an organisation, got rid of all the offices, and you get all of these senior execs sitting slightly uncomfortably on bright orange sofas, having exactly the same conversations and behaving in exactly the same way as they did previously, except now they're cold and have got nowhere to put their files. It doesn't work. However, you'll see in the book there are some examples of organisations who get it really, really right. So, you'll see in the book Rise, which is the incubator set up by Barclays over just by by Liverpool Street. It started off in Mile End a couple of years ago. I remember joining them in their first year and talking to them about it. And they've now grown to a very posh, grown-up, proper incubator over by the City of London. But they've got in right on the ground with fintech organisations, so that senior managers in Barclays see what's happening right at the cutting edge. Maybe their enthusiasm's a little bit waned, but actually now they get enthused by these people who are coming up with the latest initiatives and really enthused about what they do. Again, looking at Cisco, and you'll hear more about that from Harvey in the book, around their Ideas Anywhere programme, which biannually encourages the organisation to come forward to answer and solve their 5 strategic problems. And at the last count, 74,000 people in that organisation, over 45% of the organisation got engaged in the last Ideas Anywhere programme. Or you've got McDonald's in the UK, who've put an ideas portal onto their intranet and have got 127,000 of their crew members potentially putting forward bright ideas or solutions to customers or organisational problems. All of those things are absolutely part of innovation, but in and of themselves will not create sustainable innovation. They'll just be another initiative that you'll have done in 2019 and then forgotten about in 2020. But the fourth, and I think actually the key part of innovation, I would say this, I was an HR director after all, is about the people. The fourth element is enabling your people to innovate. This is about giving people the time, the space, and the tools and techniques to innovate. You can learn a methodology to have ideas. We recently worked with a team of leaders, and one of them said, it's just given me a different way to hold the problem for a bit longer and look at it from a different point of view. By giving people the tools, you empower them to come up with the solutions for their customers who they are closest to. A couple of examples of organisations who do that really well. So we've got J. Murphy & Sons, who are in the book, and they have their innovation champions. And also we have Menzies Aviation, a couple of people from Menzies here tonight. So Joe Harrison over there. Menzies are taking some of their high potential team members once a year, and as part of their leadership program are training them in design thinking and agile methodology, giving them a real innovation challenge to solve. So the business is getting value from that leadership intervention, and those delegates who go on that program are getting the skills and the tools and techniques to then apply it right back to their day jobs when they leave the program. That is the best return on investment for a training program I've ever heard of. So I won't go on for very much longer, except to say, yes, there are four key elements. The first is the innovation direction, a direction that's understood by everybody and everyone knows where they fit within it. Secondly, leaders who create the right environment that encourage people to experiment and fail. Third, the structures and processes in place that encourage innovation. And fourthly, enabling people through giving them the tools, the techniques, and then the space to innovate. So I hope you enjoyed the book. You'll also see in there you can go online and get a confidential report. You can actually, from your own point of view, diagnose your own organisation and see where it sits against the 4 elements of the innovation ecosystem. I'd love to hear how you get on. Hopefully you're in for an exciting ride. So go forth and innovate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. We've got some time for Q&A, but before we do Q&A, can we just give Mark another round of applause?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Not only did he just present to us about the innovation ecosystem, he also wrote a book. So, and actually, Mark, I'll kick off with the first question. So I'm hoping we can have a good Q&A around innovation. But first of all, I would like to ask you, Mark, how does it feel to have taken an idea and turned it into something that is sort of in print in a book? You know, what's going through your head right now on the day of your book launch?
That's interesting. I think that it was an idea, and it was a lovely idea, and I was really excited about the idea of doing it. But then it's not just about the idea, and to some extent, in the years I've been working in innovation, ideas are cheap, actually. Ideas are almost the easiest thing. It's about the execution. I remember when Misty and I, we were at Yum and Janelle, David Novak, our CEO, was like, it's all about the execution. It's about, anyone can have the idea. So it's been quite a slog, but it's about really planning, it's about being resilient, it's about absolutely executing, setting myself a really clear goal and some really clear timelines. So it's almost like any project or any innovation project. It's about perseverance, it's about execution. And the idea in and of itself, because it has morphed since the original kind of, when I wrote the original chapter headlines in January 2018, but it's just about, about resilience and execution.
Cool. Any other questions?
For us? Yeah. Wow. Gosh. So I think we're in a period of real transition, which is great at the moment. So I think we're looking at what we can do online. We're certainly getting more and more calls to work internationally. So we're having a look at how we can satisfy that demand. And I think also, whilst we love our kind of single interventions like training programs, what we're looking also to do is saying, can we take a whole organisation and transform it? Can we take the innovation ecosystem and absolutely take the whole organisation and transform the organisation? So that's probably what our next innovation is. Is that right? Yeah, ask the innovation director. I don't know. I'm just the mouthy one that writes the books.
The other thing, the newest thing in our business at the moment is the innovators profile, which is so new that this here in your brochure is the first that has been written about it. And actually, if you go to our website and try and find it, you won't find it yet. So it's so new that it's not been published yet. And that is an individual diagnostic to get a sense of what your innovator's type is on an individual level, because part of innovation is identifying needs and seeing opportunities. And we saw that actually there's lots of, there's MBTI, there's lots of possible psychs that you could use, but actually is there anything that's focused exclusively on innovation? And we couldn't find one, so we thought we'd make one.
Yes, we're prototyping that, and a couple of clients here tonight have very kindly been part of the trial for that, so thank you very much. So that will be coming out, I think, at the end of the first quarter. So.
Waiting soon now. Any more questions? Yeah, Duncan.
What did you learn writing this book?
What did I learn?
Yeah.
Gosh, so many things. I think I learned just to not take things at face value as well, because there's a lot of gumph around innovation, a lot of hot air. I mean, there's a lot of people, I think there's a lot of people peddling loads of rubbish out there about innovation, and actually there is a process you can go through. There absolutely, there's structures and there's process and there's methodology. But what you need, the secret sauce, is the behaviours and the attitude. So I think I reaffirmed my belief in things like design thinking, jobs to be done, and absolutely I saw them working, whether it's organisationally, whether it's over an HR initiative or whether it's a product initiative. But I think I got reinforced more and more around the need for the right attitude and the behaviours. And more, what I saw is those organisations that are continuously and sustainably innovative are the ones where leaders talk about it a lot, not just the innovation leaders. So whether it's the finance director, whether it's the HR director, everyone in the business talks about innovation. So therefore it basically, as Joe said, becomes everyone's job.
You talked about not being afraid to fail publicly. So what's the worst failure you've had so far that you'd like to share publicly?
For us, so I won't say who the client is, but we did have a situation. We were asked to design for a very well-known global brand. We were asked to design their innovation process, and someone's nodding in the room because they worked on that project with us. And so we agreed, and we pitched. It was an open pitch. We went for the piece of work, and we absolutely loved the client. She's wonderful. I'm still very good friends with her, and we put together a process, and when we won the pitch, and then suddenly loads of decks started arriving from people around the world where they had sort of been asked to input into this, and we literally got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of decks. And what we found is they didn't really want our innovation process. What they wanted us to do was basically just polish their PowerPoints. So we were stuck between sort of being very polite and loving our clients and doing the right thing for the client. And I think we probably erred too much about not offending. And so when we got to the point where we ended up presenting something, I wasn't happy with it and they weren't happy with it. And it wasn't a product that we wanted to go forward with. We ended up fixing it for them, but then they came back to us and wanted to do some more work. And the key failure, I think, for us was that our client wasn't the key stakeholder. So there was someone who ultimately was in charge of that project who we never got to speak to. And now we always say, who's kind of like, there might be someone we're working with day to day on this, absolutely, but who's the person who will decide, make the final judgment on this? And I think we're probably braver now about saying, you know, this isn't going to work for these reasons. Because ultimately we love our clients, so we want the best thing rather than the nicest experience. And sometimes there's awkward, or we talk about having pokey conversations. Sometimes those pokey conversations need to be had to make sure you deliver the best product for the client.
Well,
Hello.
So with the new ISO standard coming out for innovation management, which is all very procedural and structured and everything else,
Yeah.
it brings that black and white to innovation, which can be important. And I'm on the same page as you in terms of it's a cultural thing. So how involved have you been with that new ISO standard for innovation management and actually trying to soften it from being that horrible black and white? This is innovation, this is not.
So, you know, many years ago, I remember working in MVQs in catering and hospitality, and you can't get more detail than, you didn't mention that, did you? You can't get more detail that in terms of process and structure. I think it's important to have it, have it written down somewhere, the absolute standard. But like anything, it's got to be an element of bespoke, and you would hope that leaders in the organisation will take that, personalise it for their own organisation, and then sprinkle their own culture and magic and behaviours over it. Because, we work with organisations as diverse as McDonald's and Google. We might work on projects with them, but actually they both have different leadership objectives, they both have different strategic objectives, and they both behave in very different ways, but they might follow the same methodology of agile thinking or design thinking, which is ultimately, a standard. So it's up to leaders in the organisation, but having it somewhere, and there's also some people like structure and process, and innovation's got a bit of a bad name. I mean, I love that room over there, but some people have walked in tonight and gone, of course Google's got beanbags, haven't they, for God's sake. So it also, maybe if you need the left and the right. If someone feels a bit more comfortable with the standard, absolutely fine. I mean, we're quite creative. I'm wearing a pink jacket, for God's sake. But, we've got Gantt charts and critical paths for our projects. We're managing projects at the moment that are global, that are going over 2 years. You need structure and process, or you won't execute. And you'll end up having really nice conversations, but nothing will get delivered. And so often that is what happens with innovation. It's just a nice experience, but nothing at the end, or no value.
Thank you very much for the talks. I've really enjoyed the overview you've given on the internal innovation ecosystem. Can you talk a bit more, you mentioned RISE, but can you talk a bit more about how corporations can successfully innovate with entrepreneurs, with the external kind of innovation ecosystem?
Yeah, so RISE is a really good example. For those of you who don't know it, so Barclays, they have this sort of entity called RISE over just by Liverpool Street Station, and it's an accelerator of such, so you have to have an idea to be kind of proved, and then they help scale it. They might take some equity in it, they might coach you, they might use some leaders in their business to kind of help them coach you, they might actually buy the product from you. I think what's interesting about working with entrepreneurs and working with startups, I'm going to burst a couple of bubbles here, I think. I think it's really, really good to get different points of view. I think people get incredibly excited about the world of startups because they're so sort of plateaued and so stuck in their ways that they almost need someone else to poke them and to make the mistakes for them. And actually, I think it's great to get a different point of view and to work with startups. But startups are only really useful because they don't know what problems are about to hit them. Or they're so desperate for the cash that they will learn as quickly as possible and iterate 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. Actually, working with those startups isn't going to necessarily transfer that onto you. So it's about you in an organisation, middle management or senior management, saying, okay, I'm in this corporate machine and I've got an element of safety, which actually is what startups don't have. How can I behave like I don't? How can I force myself to keep iterating? How can I forget everything that I already know and come into it fresh like startups? And then you'll have a startup mentality. However, I do think there's some real benefits in terms of bringing in kind of fresh talent, because I certainly don't know what's going on in the head of a 22-year-old today. So when we're working on a project at the moment for a large conference organisation. It's one of the largest financial conferences in the world. 50,000 delegates go to that every single year. There's one in Vegas and one in Shanghai, and we've been asked to do some stuff on the conference. So we are going out and speaking to people who are event managers, we're speaking to people who organise big events for television shows, we're talking to people who attend events, we're talking to people who speak at events to try and get different points of view, use that parallel world, take those principles and apply it to our challenge. You can do the same with startups, but just working with a startup isn't necessarily going to change you. You need to change yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Brilliant.
One thing I see in organisations is they can push innovation out, but they can start hitting against the kind of stubborn inertia in the wider population of the yes, but. And it's because people are pushed out of their comfort zone because you're doing something different. What are your approaches to helping get through that stubborn inertia once you come out from the core innovators?
Oh, right, yeah, so from the innovation team. So, well, I mean, yeah.
The innovation people, they have a great time in
Yeah.
They're motivated.
We've got the best product in the world, look, and then it's not going to sit on our gondola end. I think the challenge, and I'll give you a real example. So a few years ago, I was running an agency, a stream of an agency in New York, and we were asked to come up with really disruptive products in the financial service industry. So we worked with the retail bank, and we used to spend lots of time in their team in Madison Avenue. We came up with some really, really interesting and exciting products. And a couple of them kind of tested fairly well in focus groups, etc. So we then said, right, let's test it, take it out to the market and test it. So we came over from America and we came to Europe, because Europe is a country. And we came to Europe and spoke to the European leadership team and said, right, we'd like you to test this. And they were like, I beg your pardon. So one, you've not involved us at all. We know nothing about this. Two, this isn't part of our strategic initiatives in any way, shape or form. And three, there's no funding, and the response was, actually, local market funds, of course the local market funds the test. So it was just batted back to the centre. So what I learned is about involving people as quickly as possible is the first thing. Understanding what the need, pain or problem is inside your organisation, then saying, we can fix some of that for you. Bringing people in on board. So, when Laura and I work on a project for an organisation, we bring in very diverse stakeholders so that lots of different people have skin in the game. And get some kind of low, quick wins under your belt there. Interestingly enough, what happened is that product that wasn't tested in Europe was launched by a competitor within 12 months, and then our client had to go to market with it as a me too, because the rest of the business hadn't been involved. So, actually, someone once described to me the innovation team as those cappuccino drinking ponces over there, and that's the worst thing that they can possibly be. So our working parties are made up with a couple of innovators, but are hard frontline operators, and once you get hard frontline operators talking about design thinking and saying, actually, I can hold this problem and I can solve it differently, you're home and dry. And that's where you get sustainable innovation. And it's not owned by the innovation team anymore. They're just people who've got the skills to bring it to life.
Great, thanks everyone. So we've got around another half an hour in this space. So there's more Prosecco, there's more pick and mix in the other room. So please do stick around. If you've got any more questions for Mark, grab him. I know Mark has got a pen. I know a signature can significantly increase the value of one of these books. So, so again, another round of applause for Mark, and thank you very much.